Okay, I've got the message up. It's recording has started, so I will make a start. Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please can I remind all participants that this meeting will be live streamed and the recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up if they can be seen on screen, or use the raise hand or chat function. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing committee, then they should let the chairman or democratic officer know. If they have a webcam, they should try turning this off, as this may help their broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth, so at least they can be heard clearly. Welcome to members, officers and public speakers and anybody else who's watching, and we are starting our meeting. So agenda 1 is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies from anybody?
No, Chair, no apologies.
Okay, thank you. Are you happy that I sign the minutes of the 29th of September as a correct?
Moving note, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Also, there's a hand up from Councillor Hodges. I don't know if he's got a question.
Oh, right, that's not showing on mine for some reason. Oh, yeah, okay, Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Chairman. Just wondered on from the last meeting if we had an update on the Reg 3 application in Bombleston, when it's going to come back to committee.
I don't know anything. I don't know if Victoria will be able to give us an update on that or not. Vicky?
No real update yet, Chair. We haven't got a report prepared for planning committee yet. Obviously it was deferred for members to come forward with reasons for refusal following the debate. I don't believe we've received any yet, but also for the applicant to consider whether or not an amended scheme might be proposed to address members' concerns. So obviously some work may be going on in the background, but things haven't progressed in as far as planning officers concerned at this stage.
Thank you. Okay, so I take it that you are happy for me to sign these minutes then. Okay, now agenda item 4 is the Barry biomass report. You will note it's for noting. Victoria Davidson is going to introduce this, and I believe Vicky might come in and give us a little update after Victoria's gone through the report. But I'll hand over to Victoria now, and we'll listen to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair's indicated, this is a reference to this committee from Cabinet. A Cabinet meeting was held on the 27th of September, and it relates to the resolution of full council on the 26th of February 2020 concerning the Barry biomass plant, which called for an independent review of the Vale of Glamorgan Council's determination of all planning applications relating to the Barry incinerator. In that regard, an independent barrister who specialises in planning and environmental law, Annabel Graham-Paul, was appointed by the Monitoring Officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services, on behalf of the Council to undertake the independent review of the Council's determination of the planning applications relating to that matter. Her report is appended to the Cabinet report, which forms part of the Planning Committee agenda today, along with a letter received from Julie James, Minister for Climate Change, dated the 29th of July 2021, which members will note postdates the independent report of Annabel Graham-Paul, which was concluded in June 2021. Briefly, members, the report has no doubt been read and considered by you, but I would just like to point out that the findings of the independent barrister are summarised in paragraphs 2.2 to 2.6 of the Cabinet report, together with additional information provided at paragraph 2.7 in respect of linked matters arising since February 2020. Her observations are also set out at paragraphs 2.7.9 and 2.7.10 in respect to the Welsh Government's interim decision dated the 29th of July 2021. Obviously, I'm not able to answer any technical queries, and members will no doubt have noted that we now know that following a meeting of the Scrutiny Committee, Environmental and Regeneration, which was held on the 19th of October 2021, a motion was approved for this matter to be referred back to full council for a full debate. So essentially, Chair, this report is here today for noting, having been referred here by Cabinet on the 27th of September.
Thank you, Victoria. Vicky Robertson, would you like to give us a little bit of an update as to where we are with the biomass plant?
Yeah, by all means, Chair, just to let members know, the report refers to the enforcement notice that was authorised by Planning Committee a few weeks back. We have now received an appeal against that enforcement notice, which I think was to be expected. They have appealed on all grounds of appeal against the enforcement notice, with the exception of ground D, which is the grounds of appeal that the development has been operational for, or has been there in existence for more than 4 years and therefore immune from action. So of note, they have appealed on ground A, which is that the development is acceptable in planning terms. So the planning inspectorate will now be considering all the different grounds of appeal, but in particular whether or not the development's acceptable in planning terms. At this stage, it's almost in abeyance because aside from making the appeal and ticking all the boxes, no further submissions were made at that time. So the new planning inspectorate, Planning and Environment Decisions Wales, have given them some time to make further submissions to sort of clarify their grounds of appeal against the enforcement notice. And then once we've received that, we'll obviously be able to respond to those grounds. So so that is ongoing, just as by way of an update. And members may also be aware of the current consultation exercise that's being undertaken by Welsh Government. You know, that is obviously being led by Welsh Government and or by their representatives who are undertaking that consultation, and it's outside of the council's remit. But I just thought I'd flag that up, because I'm sure members are already aware of that.
Lovely, thank you very much, both Victoria and Victoria. Our committee happy that we note this? Councillor Johnson, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick process question for Victoria Davidson. I was obviously present at last week's Environmental Regeneration Scrutiny Committee, and I haven't quite picked up that we weren't going to be having a similar discussion here at planning. It was just for noting. But just to come back to the how Victoria Davidson summarised the motion from last week, because if I understand it correctly, the response of the committee last week is to refer it back to Cabinet with the recommendation that Cabinet send it to full council, because obviously the committee itself can't send it to full council. Yeah, I'm just clarifying that's what was intended. So I picked up that the committee was referring to full council, and that obviously isn't quite how it works.
Yeah, obviously,
just quickly, naturally, I think a natural justice is that if full council asks for a report, then full council should be the body that receives and discusses the report, rather than have it sent around a range of committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. That was my error. I omitted to make reference to that. Of course, yes, I was probably being a little bit too hasty looking ahead to full council, but yes, certainly it has to go back to Cabinet, of course, and then will be referred on to full council, because that's where the motion originally originated from. Thank you. Thank you for addressing.
Thank you, Ian. Nick, you have a question or point? No? Oh, your hand is up. Could you take your hand down, and it's showing us up?
It's down for me, Chair. I think this is a reference thing.
I think that's just you, John.
Okay, Mark, you have a hand up, Mark Wilson.
Yeah, just to say that Rhiannon is with me. That's all. Yeah,
I can see Rhiannon there. Hi. Okay. Right. So from that, then, I'll take it that committee is happy to note, and we will obviously debate this in full when it comes to full council. Yes. Any dissent to that?
No, happy to note.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you very much. So that moves us on to agenda 5, which is building regs. Happy we note?
Yeah, move we note, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda 6 is delegated planning applications. Happy we note.
Move and we note, Chair.
Thank you. Appeals is agenda 7. I think Vicky's going to give us a quick update. Not that there's too much on there, but just a quick update, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, at the time of writing, there were no new appeals received or enforcement received. I've obviously given you a verbal update about the biomass one. In terms of decisions, just a few quickly I'll go through. We won an appeal for some works to an outbuilding to enlarge what had previously been approved, and the appeal was dismissed, agreeing with our conclusion that the changes to include dormers were excessive and would be out of character with the sort of countryside setting of the building. Another one in Penarth Marina, again, the appeal was dismissed. This related to a single-storey rear extension, dismissed on both character and appearance and on the living conditions because of the lack of resulting amenity space that would have been left. And then the last decision set out in the report is one where the appeal was allowed. This is at 38 Wordsworth Avenue, where the appeal inspector gave quite a lot of weight to the fallback position to an alternative extension that had been approved. So didn't agree with our decision in relation to the refusal of the extension, and hence that appeal was allowed. So.
Thank you, Vicky. Can't win them all, I suppose, but we've still got a very good record. That takes us on to agenda item 8, trees. So
move we note the appeals report, Chair.
Oh, yes, thank you, Ben. And then on the trees, the delegated list. Obviously, you happy we note on that?
Yeah, move and note the delegated list.
Thank you. So 8.2 or Little Eyes, 2 Little Eyes, whatever you want to call it, Iweni Priory. I believe Ian is going to run through the report for us. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Is it okay if I share my screen so I can pick up the report? Yes. Okay. Can you see my screen now with the report in it?
Yes.
Great. I'm sorry, I've struggled to get the because of IT issues. I've struggled to get the PDF up, so I'm using this Word version, but it should be okay. Okay, so this is come to committee. It's the proposal to, or the recommendation, should I say, to confirm a tree preservation order at Tinglewood, which is just north of Corntown, to the east of Iweni. It's come to committee because of objections received in response of the council's proposal to place a tree preservation order on this area of woodland. This is the main road here through Corntown that leads in a westerly direction to Iweni. The land in question is mainly a large strip of woodland adjacent to a road known as Tingle Lane, which links the main road to Abbey Road, and it's also a secondary small area just to the just at the junction between Corntown Road and Tingle Lane. I'll just give you some context with photos. So those are the trees there. That's a bank of trees as viewed from Corntown Road. As you can see, it's a pretty substantial bank of native trees. It contains a mix of ash, oak, beech, sycamore, things like that. There's a further view from Corntown Road, and these are some views from Tingle Lane. Okay, so those are just some general views of the trees. You can see the kind of the number and the overall sort of the overall quality of the group. We are proposing a tree preservation order because those complaints have been received regarding removal of trees in the area. Now, the first thing to make clear is that a Natural Resources Wales licence has been granted for works to these trees in this area. However, the officers have got some concerns, which meant that we feel the control of a tree preservation order is necessary as well, and I'll go through that in a moment. As context, further trees have been removed from along Corntown Road, again with a licence, but the consequence of the removal is that rather than thinning, it almost has the appearance of clear felling. I'll just bring a photo up here. So members may or may not have seen it, depending on whether you've passed it, but a lot of trees have been removed from this area. Now, we've been in consultation with Natural Resources Wales, and it appears that what has happened along this stretch by Corntown Road is that licensable works have taken place and thinning has taken place and trees have been removed, and subsequent to that further trees have been removed, principally ash because of ash dieback, and the consequence is a significant proportion of the woodland has been removed rather than it being simply thinning. Now, Natural Resources Wales are currently looking into whether there is any offence there or whether it is simply, to use the words they gave me, morally wrong and bad practice. I think their view is that removing ash that there are issues with may have achieved largely the purposes of the thinning works, which are to maintain good woodland management and give the trees space. The concerns the council have is that the similar things could happen along Tingle Lane. Now, I should summarise the objections received from the landowner and their agent. In essence, they feel that there's no need for a tree preservation order because the council are seeking to kind of overstep its role, and really this should be left for the licensing process via Natural Resources Wales. The members may have seen the objections listed in the report. Most of those objections, in my opinion, are founded upon the premise that good woodland management is taking place. And in consultation with Natural Resources Wales, we have concerns that actually what has taken place along the adjacent land doesn't amount to ideal practice, in that the result is a significant visual impact. Now, that's not to say that certain elements aren't justified, but at this stage in time, with the licence in place, if the council doesn't serve the TPO, we don't have likely control over the exact nature of what comes out along Tingle Lane. So in the council's view, the tree preservation order, or sorry, I say the council's, in officers' view, the tree preservation order is necessary in order for us to have a more clear understanding about the composition of the woodland and whether the licensed thinning works and subsequent removal of ash is likely to have a significant and unacceptable effect on amenity. So in response to the objections, officers feel that there are sufficient grounds to be concerned that without a TPO there would be an unacceptable impact on the woodland. The objections also reference what is claimed to be an inadequate consultation procedure with Natural Resources Wales, but to the contrary, officers have been in consultation closely with NRW, including myself, in the last couple of weeks, and they are supportive of the service of the tree preservation order. The applicant's agent is of the view that if a tree preservation order is served, then the applicant would have to apply for a new licence, and there would be no reason for that not to be granted. I can advise members that NRW's up-to-date position is that they feel that that's not the correct process, and the correct process is that if a TPO is served, then the applicant then must make an application to the council for consent to do those works. So that then puts control in the council's hands, if you like, over the impact. So yeah, I can go into more detail about the objections and the points if members want more detail, but that is a summary of them. One final point to mention is that consent to remove trees via a TPO application, were that to occur after this, that would enable the council to require replanting where appropriate, and that typically wouldn't happen after an NRW thinning licence.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, do we have anybody? Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ian, for going through that. It's clearly a very complicated set of circumstances, but I think just as in the past, we wanted to give the right tools to enforce actions in planning terms. I think the position laid out in the report is very clear about why we need to approve this TPO, and I think it's all about working with individuals, and I think, like I say, this will give us the tools to do this effectively. So I would move off to recommendations, please.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. I've got Councillor Wilson, or it might be Rhiannon, I'm not quite sure, but on Mark's line next. Mark, are you there?
Yeah, yes, I'm here. I just like to second Councillor Gray's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Rhiannon. And Councillor Neil Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Ian, thank you for your presentation. It clarified a lot of things. When does thinning become slash and burn? Because the photographic evidence and looking at some of the stuff that was sent through to us this morning as well, so the extra photographs that were sent through this morning, some of the woodland area has been absolutely devastated. I mean, there's no woodland left. It's all down from the appearance of the photographs. So it's clear that some sort of interpretation of thinning needs to be brought into some definition rather than thinning needs to be brought into line here, because if that's thinning, then God help us all. I support officers' recommendations.
Thank you, Neil. Well, I would suggest that by doing this, by putting a TPO on it, it does give us that extra control, whereas a thinning licence is a very broad brush and is designed for large areas of woodland that don't really have a massive impact on the environment. Well, not the environment, the visual environment that this has. So if there are no other objectors, I'll take it that we are all happy to move officer's recommendation. Andrew, you wanted a quick one? Andrew Parker?
Yeah. My question relates to, obviously, maybe Cadw should be consulted as well, because this would have a material effect on, obviously, a listed grade 1 building, which is the Priory.
Well, it would be a visual, but having the TPO on would give us that opportunity, wouldn't it? Ian, you wanted a quick response?
Yeah, I was. Oh, sorry, let me take this down. Yeah, I mean, the process of granting a license is one that NRW do. I be honest, I don't know whether that fundamentally includes consulting Cadw or not. I know that they don't tend to consult the local planning authority directly on license applications. They have the details on their website, but they don't have a practice of consulting us directly. So I don't know whether they did with Cadw in this case, or whether there's a requirement to. Now, if the council were to receive a tree preservation order application, if it were confirmed, and if the applicant made that application, then we could consider then whether there were merit in consulting Cadw. But it would largely be a kind of an amenity assessment as to the impact of the removal of those trees on the character of the area.
Yeah, that was really my point. I think it's important that we do consult at that appropriate stage should an application be made. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Peter Thomas.
Hello, Chair. It might be worth just noting that the trees form part of the historic park, which is a designation made by Cadw and forms part of our considerations in as a planning authority. They clearly contribute to the character and appearance of the park as well. So that's just something to add to that mix.
Thank you, Peter. Very helpful.
Thank you, Peter. Well spotted. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't hear any dissent. We will take it that committee is happy to move the officer's recommendation of granting a TPO on that. And that will move us on then to agenda item 9, 2021-00363 Bellevue Pavilion. And I believe Victoria is going to introduce this to us.
Thanks, Chair. Can you see the report? I hope I'm sharing.
Yes, clearly, yeah.
Lovely, great. Okay, so I know we've got public speakers on this. We haven't got any matters arising, but so I will just very briefly introduce the proposal and then obviously let the public speakers have their say. So this is a Regulation 3 application made by the council to the local planning authority for works within Bellevue Pavilion on Albert Crescent in Penarth. For those of you that aren't familiar, this is the Bellevue Gardens Park area, and the application relates to the demolition of the existing bowling pavilion and adjacent ancillary buildings, which are also subject to a separate conservation area consent application, which is on the agenda after this item. Including the removal of 3 trees and then associated works to build a new community building set out in the the plan. So there's the site edge red plan. Hopefully you can see these are the buildings that are currently on site just to the side of the bowling green area. And then these are the floor plans of the new community building. You can see a sort of covered terrace area at the front, fronting onto the bowling green, and some communal space with kitchen and servery areas and stores, and then toilet and a changing place facility as well to the rear of the building, all enclosed. Hopefully you can see these elevations. So single story, relatively low key, dual pitch roof. And in the report, there are some helpful contextual drawings to show the site as it currently is, and then the building as would be from the same view, which hopefully members can see gives you quite a degree of context. You'll see from the report there have been concerns raised by members of the public. So we've had about, I think it's 57 letters of objection to the proposal, and those reasons are set out quite clearly in the report. Concerns that have been raised there. But as set out in the officer's report, the impacts on the conservation area and the proposals are considered to be acceptable in terms of scale and design and impact on the wider area. Clearly, the use is compliant with planning policy in terms of favouring community facilities in these kind of locations, and it's in fact replacing an existing facility that's no longer fit for purpose in terms of the condition of the existing building. So yeah, recommended for approval with various conditions, including things like replacement tree planting at a ratio of 2:1 in accordance with our supplementary planning guidance, and other biodiversity enhancement measures like bird boxes and so on. So I think that probably summarises it from my point of view, and I happily hand over to public speakers, I think, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Yes, looks a wonderful facility. So, public speakers, we have three on this. Catherine Mccaffer, Councillor Catherine Mccaffer, Dave Nevitt from our Council Department, and Mr. Michael Hodgkinson. So I'll take them in order. Firstly, Catherine Mccaffer, they all have 3 minutes each. And I will stop you as soon as your 3 minutes is up if you haven't finished. So don't think me being rude, it's just fairness in the way we do it. So
before you start your clock, Chair, I wasn't sure if I was talking to the demolition or I was talking to the actual application for the new build.
Well, no, the demolition is the CAC, so you're talking to the new build, really.
Okay.
If you wanted to talk on the CAC one, just wave your hand about and we'll, but generally the CAC kind of follows suit. So,
Chair,
Sorry, Chair.
John.
yes, Vicky.
Sorry,
I think go on.
Sorry, I can't hear. I was just going to say the planning application covers both. So the planning application includes the demolition of the existing building and the proposal for the replacement and new building. So that's what we're discussing now at this one. The conservation area consent only considers the demolition. Okay.
Okay, thank you. All clear.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee.
I'm sure Gareth will start his clock when you start speaking, Catherine.
Okay, thank you so much. As this isn't directly my ward, I wanted to clarify that I'm speaking to this application in my capacity as Cabinet member. I will also point out that I'm one of the local authority appointed members to the Friends of the Bellevue Park Committee and have been actively involved in events in the park in recent years. I'm also a mother of 2 young boys whom Bellevue Park is their park of choice. This application seeks to provide for the wider community. I'm supportive of this principle as there was a loss of non-secular community space in the St Augustine's ward. The council consulted in early 2019 with responses collated in June 2019. This consultation was advertised on social media, posters were put up in the park and surrounding areas. Penarth Town Council, Penarth Youth Action, Friends of Bellevue and Albert Road Primary were all asked for their input into this. Drop-in public sessions were also attended. There were 134 responses and suggestions were made for the building to include a cafe, kitchen, toilets, meeting rooms and large hall and baby changing facilities. The layout and structure of this building took into account the consultation feedback. Another consultation took place in 2020. This consultation had 132 responses, with 82% of respondents being in favour of the layout of the proposed building. The Friends of Bellevue Committee has been in existence for about 20 years and have held varying events in the current building, including Halloween events, one coming up this Saturday, making lanterns at Christmas, bird watching events, and not forgetting the ever popular music in the park in the summer. The new building will encourage a wide range of community groups to be able to use the space, which was mentioned in the 2020 consultation. Anyone who's attended a meeting or event in the current building can attest to how uninviting and inaccessible it is and freezing cold. The new building will include a changing places facility, which is invaluable to those who need it. The only other one in Penarth is in our leisure centre in Coburn, which is some distance away. The park itself is within walking distance from bus routes, and in my experience, most parents walk there with their children. While it's sad that the existing dilapidated building needs to be demolished, it has had a long life, which has mainly benefited the bowling club. The materials to be used for construction are sympathetic to its location, as is the height of the proposed building. I welcome the building of a new pavilion as a way to ensure the whole community is supported for future generations so they can keep adding to the history of this location. There have been multiple consultations ahead of coming to this stage, and the final design, as I've mentioned, includes elements that everybody was looking for. So I hope the committee will go with the officer recommendations and approve its application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Well within your time. Vic, do you want to come back on any of Catherine's points? No? Okay, thank you. So our next speaker is Dave Nevitt. Dave, are you there?
I am. Thank you for giving me this opportunity this afternoon.
Lovely. Same rules with you, Dave. 3 minutes, over to you. And Gareth will start the timer when you start speaking.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm speaking from a leisure perspective, unsurprisingly, and I just wanted to pick up, first of all, the sort of concerns that I know some members are aware of from bowlers that have used the facility. I think it is worth pointing out that during the last few years when we were operating the green, and obviously they've transferred to a self-management model, we were actually selling less than 20 season tickets annually. So we were obviously making a significant investment in terms of those particular individuals. But really what I want to concentrate on is the proposal for the new building, which is obviously a considerable investment and one that leisure services particularly are keen to ensure is used to its full potential. By combining community use, the use of the bowlers, events, etc., we are confident that this can be achieved, attracting several hundred users to a building on a weekly basis, and something that we see as it being extremely positive moving forward for the local community. As Catherine has said, we've worked with the Friends of Bellevue for about 20 years, and one of my fellow officers, John Greatorex, has been heavily involved in terms of the work that's been done by the group and the many sort of local initiatives that have been run off the back of that, which have been particularly successful. The group have proved themselves, you know, extremely committed to their local community with the events and activities they've operated. And clearly we feel from a leisure services perspective that the building provides a springboard for even more community activity to take place in this area of Penarth. I think in summary, we would say we're really excited by this project and the opportunities that this building will actually represent. And having seen the examples of our other community centres and the changes that have been made to some of our other pavilions, etc., you know, we just see this as a tremendous opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. Yes, it does look a wonderful facility. Vicky, nothing to come back on there? No? Okay, so our last speaker on this is Mr. Michael Hodgkinson.
Are there questions of clarification, Chair?
Yes, sorry, pick me up on that one. Anybody got any? Oh, Vince Driscoll.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Dave Devitt. Hi, Dave. I haven't seen you for a while.
Hi.
Who's the council paying for this? Obviously, what's the cost, and how can you guarantee that you'll get these users? Bearing in mind only 20 people used it previously.
Okay, I think the cost of the building is something that's gone through other committees. The majority, a significant amount of the cost is obviously being funded from Section 106. And in addition, we've been fortunate enough to have secured a grant from the lottery in terms of building this particular building. In terms of guaranteeing the uses, etc., I can only say what goes on in our other buildings. And obviously working with the Friends, etc., it's in terms of attracting groups to actually use this facility. From the research that's done that Catherine touched upon, there's already a great deal of demand for community activities in this particular area. I think we've got little doubt that we will actually hit the targets that we've set to the lottery in terms of having the application for funding actually approved. I'm hoping that possibly Charlotte Rain's on the call, who can give you the exact financial figures in terms of the cost of the building. Sorry, I'm trying not to avoid answering that, but I haven't got them immediately to hand.
Whilst it's all very interesting, this wasn't really a point of clarification, but I did let it go because I think it is poignant to the application. But are you happy with that answer, Vince?
Well, he didn't actually answer, did he?
No, but well, section 106 basically is the majority.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. Okay, yeah, I welcome the improvements. That's for sure. But
it does look a very exciting facility, and I must admit I've seen the old one and been in there some time ago, and it is it's tired. Neil wanted to come in.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks,
no, I'm just trying to indicate that I want to speak after the public speakers, please, as ward member.
Yeah, okay. So public speakers now, we have Mr. Michael Hodgkinson. Mr. Hodgkinson, are you there?
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
I can hear you. I can see you now as well. Lovely. Yes.
Perfect. Thanks for having me. I'm here in my capacity as the chair of Friends of Bellevue. As mentioned by Catherine, our group has been around for the last 20 years and had the opportunity to facilitate various community events at Bellevue Park, of which many have involved the use of the existing facilities. But we do recognise that the current facility is beyond its structural life. To some of the questions raised, the current facility is limited in capability in terms of its ability to hold more than 20 to 25 people. The heating is largely non-existent. The toilet facilities are limited and not accessible. So we're really excited to see the positive impacts that having a purpose-built facility that is accessible to all age groups, including the changing place and baby changing facilities, will have a really positive impact on the number of people and the impact that the events that we will hold will have in the future. We're also excited about the energy saving credentials of the building. I think that's really great to see the CDM roof and the solar panels having a positive impact in the local area. Would like to recognise that the design has been an iterative process. Friends of Bellevue have had regular meetings with officers, as well as some of the local residents and park users, and really come up with a number of amendments that balance the needs of everyone, minimising the loss of green space, and we are fully supportive of the proposals and ask the committee to positively support it.
Thank you very much. Again, you've all been very well behaved with your time. Does anybody have any points of clarification on this? No? Okay, thank you very much. We will now open up the debate. That's all from our public speakers. Thank you. And Neil has sat there very patiently waiting, so I'll ask.
Actually, Vicky had her hand up before I did, so maybe she wants to make some sort of contribution first. No?
No. No.
Okay, that's good. I will go ahead then. Thank you, Chair. I called this in as a local member as it became clear when the first communications took place that this application had raised considerable local interest. Anyone who knows this building will recognise that what is there now has outlasted its natural life, and the modifications made over the years have not been sympathetic. It's only a matter of time before the state of the present building forces closure for health and safety reasons, if nothing else. The need for a community resource at this location has been well established by the groups and individuals who already use the building. I think Councillor Driscoll misunderstood when we were talking about 20 Bowls Club members. That's just the membership of the Bowls Club. There's also significant usage by people just visiting the park, by other groups and etc. that have used it historically as well. Bellevue is a credit to the community and the Friends of Bellevue steering group, who over the last couple of decades have turned a largely derelict space into an area for play, relaxation, recreation, valued by all. There have been some letters objecting to aspects of the application. Some are not planning concerns and others have been addressed within the report. The main objections in representations I've received relate to the change in overall appearance. The wooden features are viewed as being of aesthetic value, and the proposed building is regarded as too corporate or industrial for this setting. The present building has been the subject of much unsympathetic modification over the years, and some people think these are an eyesore. And I've long thought that the back, the east-northeast aspect, has some very dark, unsightly elements. In my view, local planting and the possibility of future planting could soften the appearance of a new building over time, as with the sedum roof. I would support moves to plant climbers and such close to plain walls, which would also benefit wildlife by encouraging nesting birds, for example. Certainly, the appearance of the building and the conservation area is worthy of consideration. And I believe the modifications to the plans that were referred to in the iterative process have responded to and acknowledged the consultation comments. The loss of the 3 trees is also a matter of concern, but again, within the body of the report, we know that 2-for-1 planting is intended. Trees, as we all know, are hugely important in mitigation of climate crisis, the nature crisis, carbon uptake, biodiversity, and well-being and mental health. Bellevue and its surrounding streets constitute a green oasis in this quite densely populated area of my ward, and as I said before, help mitigate the extreme weather events by contributing to a shielding canopy. Replacement trees must be installed in the locality at the rate of at least 2-for-1, preferably of indigenous species that support biodiversity, and hopefully of something a little larger than the usual small saplings to help establish the canopy a little sooner. I'm pleased to see conditioning that helps address the ecology concerns that have been raised. In conclusion, I look forward to hearing further debate from colleagues about this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Vicky, did you want to come in now, or should we have a bit more debate? And yeah, okay. Councillor Gray, Ben, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, and thank you to Councillor Thomas for calling this in so that we can have this discussion. I mean, it is going to be a major investment into a community facility, and I think it is right that we have the conversation in a public forum so that we can hear the views. I note the report and the contents and what's been put in there, but I must admit that this looks like a fantastic facility, and actually having seen how it's amended through the different stages of consultation, I feel assured that there have been things taken into account. And I think that this balancing act of what we try and do is absolutely in keeping with how we are trying to approach, I believe, planning for things in these areas. And so, I mean, clearly we'll touch on that if this goes through on the next application for the conservation area consent. I'd also like to thank people from, officers from within the area and the cabinet members for coming along and talking to this matter. I think in the past, the committee's not been able to fully grasp some of the rationale around new school projects, for instance, where there hasn't been an involvement from certain departments, and so it's been useful to get that. I'd like to move off to recommendations. I think this is a fantastic facility, and I hope everyone can support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I'd be more than happy to second your movement. Anybody else wanting to speak or come back on that, or should we take a vote on it? Okay, I don't see any more hands up. Officer's recommendation is for approval. If you are not happy with voting for that officer's recommendation of approval, please speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, I don't see anyone waving at me. I don't see any hands up on the facility and nothing in the chat. So we will take it that has gone through. Thank you all very much on that. So that moves us on then to the conservation area. And that is 00364 CAC. Vicky, I believe that you're going to just briefly lead us through this.
Yeah, I mean, there's no need for me to go into any detail. I think you've all grasped the nature of this. The conservation area consent is required because of the size of the building in the conservation area, and it needs permission for its demolition, obviously as part of the wider scheme and the conservation area consent on its own, recognises that and puts a condition that, it's subject to a further scheme being considered to be acceptable, hence the full application that we've just considered. So, yeah, nothing really further to add, Joe.
Okay, thank you. It is a bit of a formality, this. Neil, I think it's probably a glitch. Your hand is showing us up.
No, I just wanted A, to move the officer's recommendations on this, and B, to note that when the new playground as well, which is in the process of being upgraded and improved at the moment, it comes in, that coupled with this new the new pavilion, which the demolition has to go ahead for, then we can have a fantastic park, and I'm really delighted that this is going to be in my ward. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Gray.
Second officer recommendations, please.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, yeah, I'm just checking the hands up. No, I don't see any others. So again, same format with this. Officer's recommendation is obviously for demolition. Any dissenters to that recommendation? Speak now or forever hold thy peace. Good, okay. So that's that one passes as well. So the next one on our agenda is 2021-00508, Windward Terminal Atlantic Way, and Ian is going to introduce this to us. Ian Robinson, that is, not Ian Johnson. Ian, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just share my screen again. Right, so this is, there's two applications before committee tonight relating to this site. The first one is this one, the planning application for the change of use, and the second application is for a hazardous substances consent, but we're doing the planning application first. So this is the site is on Dockland in Barry, and it's shown on the site below. It's just to the south of the land known as East Quay, which is where the last sort of phase of the waterfront residential developments are happening. So currently there's some vacant buildings and a yard. The application site was last put to general dock and storage uses. The application proposes the change of use for the storage of LPG, liquid petroleum gas, so up to 100 tonnes of liquids and 200 tonnes of gas. Now, this needs planning permission fundamentally because it is a sui generis use. So although it is very similar in kind of character and nature and function to general industrial storage uses, technically it doesn't fall within use class B8, so it's a sui generis use. So on the issue of principle, it's located within what the LDP identifies as being existing employment land, but the council's policies don't preclude sui generis uses where they are compatible with the overall nature of the employment land, and officers are of the view that this is very much akin to the kind of use you see on employment sites and industrial land. So in principle, it seems to fit happily with the surrounding uses. In highways terms, the pattern of vehicle movements we wouldn't envisage would be significantly different to what you'd expect for other storage and industrial uses in this kind of location. Also relevant to note, actually, if I just bring up the report for the hazardous consents application, because it's got a plan in which is quite useful. It shows the relationship between the site and the consultation zones for hazardous uses. It just shows that the residential approvals at East Quay sit outside of the safety zones, so there's no conflict there. So we'll come to the hazardous substances issues afterwards, but in principle, with the planning application, we're looking at the nature of the use, whether it's acceptable by virtue of the status of the land, and highway traffic and highway safety issues. There's no residential properties particularly close that this should result in noise or disturbance or environmental harm to. So it's recommended for approval.
Thank you, Ian, very much. Okay, we do have public speakers on this. So the first one is Mr. Andy Carter, and the second one is Mr. Delphrin Hall. So I'll take them in order. You will both have 3 minutes each. Mr. Carter, are you there? I am,
thank you, Chair.
And I can hear you loud and clear, lovely. You have got 3 minutes from when you are comfortable and ready to commence. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to address Planning Committee. My name's Andy Carter and I represent the applicants Harp International. As the officers summarised, the proposals are for the Winwood Terminal site. They're relatively modest in scale. It's change of use sought to allow storage and distribution of both LPG and flammable liquids. The proposals see the construction of a deluge pump house, filling shed and deluge tank that are shown in the report. On-site buildings will be reused for storage and offices, and access will be gained from Atlantic Way across an adjacent site. There's a parallel application that's submitted to seek formal hazardous substance consent, and I understand that's the next item on the agenda. However, as the applications are representing basically two halves of the same proposal, I will make reference to the hazardous substance consent application. The applicants have worked with the case officer to resolve initial comments that were raised by Natural Resources Wales, and consequently NRW have updated their position to confirm no objection to either application. Matters such as mineral safeguarding, parking and access and visual impacts have all been summarised in the officer's report and are considered to be in accordance with planning policy. The report for the hazardous substance consent application has assessed the potential impact on strategic housing sites at the Barry waterfront, and in the context of the advice from the HSE has confirmed that the proposed housing development is outside the consultation zones provided by the HSE. Full details, including the consultation zone plan, are at page 108 in the pack of committee reports, and that was the plan that was shown up in the recent presentation. The reports to both applications, therefore, confirm that there have been no objections made to either of the applications. Therefore, in light of these matters, it's considered the proposals represent an appropriate reuse of a vacant brownfield site and will allow for a business with an existing facility in South Wales to expand and provide new jobs to the local area. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Again, well within your time. Does anybody have any points of clarification? Now, I see Neil's got his hand up. I'm not sure if that's a point of clarification. Neil, is it?
I didn't think I had my hand up still.
Just gone down now anyway. Okay.
It wasn't.
Okay, so anybody else points of clarification? No? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Carter. We will now talk to Mr. Hall. Mr. Hall.
Sorry, Chair, that's for the next application. It's just one public speaker on this one.
Yes, sorry, you're correct, Ben. Again, you're putting me right twice today. Okay, so who wants to speak on this one then? Anybody? Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I assume you mean Councillor Johnson rather than Ian Robinson.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, Councillor Johnson.
We just have to do this. You shout Ian and two of us look confused at the same time. Thank you much, Chair. Thank you much to Mr. Carter for speaking on that and explaining the application here. What we have here, I think I just wanted to Mr. Carter made reference to it, to the reason that it was called into committee by Councillor Collins, who sadly can't make it today because obviously she has work commitments. When the original consultation went out at the end of April, start of May, there was a response from Natural Resources Wales, which caused concern to the local councillors, or some of the local councillors, to Barry Town Council, and to some of the environmental groups who wanted to get greater information. Now, I'm a little confused because the response from Natural Resources Wales is not on the planning portal that we have there. So the initial response, which was on the 7th of May, and that response says that we have significant concerns with the proposed development as submitted. We recommend should only grant planning permission if the following requirements are met, which are related to drainage and LPG storage tanks. Now, I understand that that a further reconsult was held with some of the statutory consultees, where information was provided by Mr. Carter and others, but that wasn't a full reconsultation with with Barry Town Council and local councillors. So what we have, and I can see that Ian Robertson's got his hand up and is going to give me an explanation of this later on. What we have is a report which fails to reference the original response from Natural Resources Wales, for which there has been sort of a back and forth between the applicant and NRW, and the fact that that doesn't actually then fit in around the responses from Councillor Collins and from Barry Town Council, which are expressing concern based around what Natural Resources Wales have said. At this point, I don't know if it's worth giving way to Ian Robertson to explain what's happened here, because I feel that the report provides a slight disconnect, as I say, between what was happening in May, when obviously we had the report on the Barry biomass earlier, and concerns that people had about what was there and what's actually transpired here. I think the chair's on mute. I don't know if he's slightly lagging on things anyway as well, but yeah.
Ian Robinson, I'm sure you'll be able to answer Councillor Johnson's concerns.
Yeah, I will try. So firstly, if the up-to-date one wasn't on the website, my apologies for that. In terms of Natural Resources Wales first, their standard responses, in my opinion, have a really unfortunate terminology where essentially when they mean no objections subject to conditions, they use the phrase significant concerns, which in my opinion is quite misleading. And I've actually seen a Wales Online article where the headline was essentially NRW raised significant concerns about project, and anybody not familiar with their terminology would think that's a big problem. Essentially what it means is no objections subject to conditions. So I think that's unfortunate, but subsequent to the first consultation, additional information was submitted which clarified that the storage wouldn't be underground, which meant that there weren't a certain set of particular implications for NRW to consider. And there was also clarification given about drainage, surface water and foul arrangements being as per the existing situation. So subsequently they have removed the objection. No, sorry, that's wrong. They've amended their comments so that there's no implied objection. In terms of the report, sometimes a report might refer to both. I think typically our reports probably refer generally to the most up-to-date set of responses from consultees. It's not uncommon to have a kind of a series of comments from consultees. It's a fair point, and actually going forward, there's no reason why we can't be a bit more explicit, potentially with original and subsequent comments if members feel that would give greater clarity. Regarding consultations, there's no hard and fast rules about when to reconsult. So there are rules about consulting at the beginning of a process, and generally it's a matter of judgment for officers as to whether things have changed which necessitates reconsultation, and if so, who. And that's the case with residential applications and applications like this. Now, typically, if the impacts are becoming less, we don't reconsult. Imagine with a typical householder application. So if somebody objects on size and amendments are received and the thing gets smaller, we don't and the impacts aren't increasing, we generally wouldn't reconsult. And similarly, we would typically reconsult to consultees where the specific where the additional information or specific change is relevant to them. So in this case, it was specifically a matter for NRW in terms of their comments, and I think that's probably why they were reconsulted alone. That would be my judgment as to why the town council and members haven't seen the reconsultations. Although I take Councillor Johnson's point that if they had been reconsulted, they would have been fully aware of the fact that additional information was there.
Thank you, Ian. Come back to Councillor Johnson then.
Yes.
Response, Ian?
Yes, and thank you much to Ian Robinson for that. I mean, I think we have perhaps an unfortunate set of events that roll into each other here, because the reason that I suspect that the reason that this received was requested to be called in was because of NRW's use of the phrase significant concerns. I don't know whether there's some way of asking them to change perhaps how they refer to that. But so what's missing from the portal is the initial response from NRW, which is the 7th of May. So you have the reconsult response. I'm aware that I think that Kerry Rollins has written to Councillor Collins, sort of asking about this, but that this has come to us now because of something that was in the pipeline in May, and that if people had been fully reconsulted on the basis of actually one of the statutory consultees has withdrawn or accepted that there aren't any concerns, then maybe it wouldn't be here with us a committee at this point in time. It's just a thought about the process, but thank you very much for the explanation.
I take your point on that one, Ian, and I think actually once something has been called into committee, I don't think it can be changed and taken back, because we've looked at this in the past. I stand to be corrected on that. But.
I don't know the exact process whether someone wants to clarify it, but I mean, it's we remove the delegated powers, don't we? So if those powers can be put back in, then well, I mean, I'm sure there's occasions when I've been asked by officers to remove my call in to allow them to make a decision because that's more appropriate. I don't know if that may be in the case this time round, but we are where we are. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sure Ian will enlighten us, or Vicky, either one of you.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is I think my understanding is the call in was made citing the quantity of public concern being raised. I don't think it specifically made reference to NRW comments. I've not got it in front of me, but my understanding is that was the basis of it. And obviously, if that were the case, we would have felt it was needed to remain at committee.
If just very briefly, Chair, I mean the public concern that was coming forward was on the basis of the NRW comments, because people were seeing that and coming forward. If the reconsult had taken place with NRW after NRW had removed those, then they wouldn't have been public concern because NRW's problems would have been resolved.
I do see your frustration, Ian. Vicky, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, just to clarify for members' information for future, really, for call-in requests, once we've received a call-in request, we will then advertise that matter as going to committee, and that obviously gives an expectation to applicants and the public and everything else that it's going to committee. We will sometimes ask members to remove that call-in where we're minded to refuse the application anyway. And the basis on doing that is because the applicant has a right of appeal. So they're not disadvantaged in not having that sort of public hearing because they've got a right of appeal. In the reverse, we wouldn't remove the delegation. So where officers are minded to approve, there isn't a third party right of appeal against approval. So hence the matter goes through to committee. So hopefully that gives a bit of clarification on process.
Very much so, yeah. Ben, you wanted to come in.
As I'm sure members and the public will know, I'm a great lover of process, and my time as chair of the committee, I bathed in process. But getting back to the application, I feel reassured by the answers, and I recognise the passage of time with regards to the points raised. This is a use of a piece of land on the docks for something appropriate, and I think that the things in place and mentioned in the report now, having heard the explanation, I think that was useful. I feel happy to recommend or move officer recommendations.
Thank you, and I'm more than happy to second that. I don't see any other hands up, so I will take it to a vote. And same process on this one. Is anybody not happy that we're going with officer's recommendation of approving this? No, all quiet. So I take it from that silence that we are approving the full planning application. So that moves us on to the HAZ application, 524 HAZ. And Ian, I guess you'll give us a brief spiel on what it actually means.
Sure. Yes, thank you, Chair. So alongside needing planning permission, a development of this nature, given the nature of what's being stored, it also requires something known as hazardous substances consent. So this application is for that. It's recommended for approval with just one condition, which stipulates that the operation of the site shall be in accordance with the details provided on the form, and that relates to things like quantities and locations of where the materials are stored.
Lovely, thank you. So this is all relatively simple. I don't see anybody wanting to come in, so I'm happy to move
We're
it.
going to hear from the public speaker, or are they wishing to withdraw from speaking?
No, I think we better had, because we have a public speaker registered, we'll give him the option now. Mr. Hall, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I would, please.
Okay, 3 minutes, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon, Prynawn da chi gyd. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favour of this planning application this afternoon. My name is Delvin Hall. I am the Operations Manager and Dangerous Goods Safety Advisor for Harp International. We are based in Treforest, near Pontypridd. We've been trading since 1990. Harp International, in line with changing legislation, is moving from fluorinated greenhouse gases with medium to high global warming potential to refrigerant gases with a higher concentration of hydrocarbons, which have a very low GWP rating, so much safer for the environment. This entails phasing out our traditional refrigerants in favour of the newer, greener, flammable gases. We currently contract out this fill-in, an operation up in North Wales, obviously not great for the carbon footprint. So if we were based in Barry, where our main haulage contractor is S&K Haulage, which is just opposite the other side of the docks, it would significantly reduce transport, carbon emissions, and I think it'll be an all-round better option. So the other thing is we are BSI accredited. That means we are audited twice a year to make sure we are conforming to all the regulations. We're a heavily regulated industry, as you can imagine, with gases, especially with flammables. We have regular visits, as I said, with the BSI. The HSE also call in from time to time to check up on us. They come unannounced, and we always have a clean bill of health. And the Department for Transport also take an interest for obvious reasons. And I'm glad to say Harp International has an exemplary safety record for the last 30 years we've been trading. We're hoping to create jobs in the area, obviously. We already support S&K, as I've said. They've got hundreds of employees. And we're going to start off small with 1 or 2 employees, but hope to expand over the next 10 years or so. So in view of that, I hope that you can look upon our application favourably this afternoon, and thank you all again for giving me this opportunity. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. If you just hang on.
Tim, give me a glass of water, please.
Yeah, I think, Vince, you need to mute yourself. I think it sounds like you, but anyway, we're all having fun here this afternoon. I
am muted. Well, I was.
Well, you we'll send someone along with a glass of water shortly. So does anybody have any points of clarification? There's nothing but a smile put on our face at the moment. No, lovely. Thank you very much, Mr. Hall. We will now go to the debate. Councillor Gray, your hand is up.
I don't want to cut across any Barry members, but I'd like to move off to recommendations based on the discussion we'd already had on the previous application.
Okay, thank you, and I'm happy to second that. This does seem a bit of a formality, this part of the process. So again, we're all happy with the officer's recommendation on this. If you are not happy with it, please speak now. Okay, I take it from that this goes through with officer's recommendation. Thank you all for that. So that moves us on to the next application, which is 2021-009094, the Verlands Cowbridge. And I believe Vicky is doing this for us as well.
Thank you, Chair. I won't share my screen unless members particularly want me to, if there's anything that you want to have a look at. But it's a relatively straightforward application. It's a Section 7(3) application to vary a planning permission which was previously granted for a house, to change a couple of the details. Primarily, we're looking at changing materials of the dwelling, which was due to be clad in timber and is now proposed to be clad in a copper coloured standing seam sorry, I'll get my teeth back in, standing seam metallic roof cladding material, and also for the enclosure of the side boundary with a 1.8 metre high timber fence, as set out in the report. I think the matter was called into the planning committee by local members. Happy to take any questions on that. Thanks, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. I see the local member has his hand up. Andrew, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vicky. This was called in by the 3 ward members, Councillor Jarvie, Councillor Cox and myself, really because of a lot of local concern. Historically, there have been many concerns about this application relating to fencing that has been put up. The application, when it arrived with us, had a 2.4 metre old money 8-foot high fence, and that was the main reason for our concern. Subsequent to us removing delegation, consultation took place, and it's now been reduced to 1.8, 6 feet in old money. So that has overcome the major concern. The choice of material is subjective, and really is not a matter that I would go into at this stage. But I will be abstaining, Chairman, just to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, does anybody else want to speak on this? Yes, Councillor Gray.
Thank you. I recognise the comments made by Councillor Parker, and obviously we've covered in great detail when and where delegations come and go. I'd like to move off to recommendations. Clearly, design change on something already approved. I think the detailed in the report, it is different to the local area. I can understand the strength of feeling from some. It's a subjective matter, but I'd move off to recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Gray, and I'm happy to second that. Does anybody else want to speak on this before we take it to a vote? While I'm asking that, can I just ask a quick process question of Gareth? Gareth, if we know Andrew is going to abstain, but if everybody else is happy with the application, do we need to take a record, to record who's voting which way?
No, Chair, we'll just note that Councillor Parker abstained and everyone else was in agreement.
I thought that would be the case. Okay, that's what we'll do then. So I haven't had anybody else put their hand up. I will ask members of the committee, are they happy with officer's recommendation? Andrew has indicated he's abstaining, but anybody else, would they like to make any different decision? No, very quiet on that. So that is the case, then it passes with 1 abstention. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next one, we're on to Tower Hill residential home. It's 2021-00958 full. And yet again, Vicky, you're busy tonight. You're going to introduce.
Thanks, Chair.
And we do have...
I had a month off last month, so I'll do my bit this month. Okay, so again, I won't share the screen. Hopefully members will have seen this. The photographs in the committee report already speak for themselves, really. The reason this has come to planning committee is because it's for a dual recommendation for refusal of the planning application and also for enforcement action. And the application relates to a visitor pod porta cabin type construction that's been erected in the rear, what would otherwise be garden area, but the rear part of the plot that at the time was a care home, but I understand is currently vacant, and we have a separate application to convert that into a dwelling. The application seeks to retain that visitor pod. Understandably, these kind of facilities were needed during the pandemic when visiting restrictions were imposed for care homes, and I understand that was the reason for it to be installed in the first place. But obviously, restrictions have eased, and also the use of the building has ceased at this stage, and we see no justification to retain what is actually, quite an ugly building out of context with the character of the surrounding area, and hence the reason why we feel that the application should be refused and action should be taken to remove the building from the site.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. Tower Hill, former Tower Hill residential home sits within my ward. Yeah, I completely echo what you said. Obviously, with my cabinet member hat on, I'm well aware of the closure of the residential home and the needs that residential homes had for temporary facilities outside. This is attempting to retain something to add to facilities when then changing use. It would be, you know, an additional asset to the building potentially, but totally out of keeping with the area and really does need to be removed. So to my mind, the report says it all, and I'd move off to recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. And again, I am happy to second that. Does anybody else want to make any points on this one? No. Lovely. Okay, so I'll ask committee members again, if you are not happy with the recommendations, please tell me now. Otherwise, we will go with the officer's recommendations, both to enforce and to refuse. Nobody's coming, so a full officer's recommendation on that one. Thank you very much. Okay, on to our final planning application, which is 2021-01089, and it's 54, no, it's not, it's 11 Clinton Road, Penarth. We do have two public speakers on this one as well, but Vicky is going to introduce it first, and then the public speakers will come in after that. Vicky, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you see, I don't know if I'm sharing the right thing now, can you see photographs of the site?
Nothing's being shared on my screen at the moment. That's,
how about now?
That's photos, a line of photos. Could you zoom in on them? They're very small.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I'm on two screens and it's tricky to...
Well, that's better.
Hang on, I'm going to get there.
Yeah, that's much better. Brilliant.
Okay, great. So I'll show you these as we just to sort of give you some context for the site, really. So the application relates to removal of this carport, which you can just about make out the roof of it in this photograph, and then the building beyond. That shows it slightly better in this photograph here. This is a view of the side of the carport, so you can see the carport roof and the side of the dwelling beyond. This is taken from the neighbour's house looking towards it. Similarly, same neighbour looking towards the garage outbuilding towards the back of the site, just to sort of show that neighbour relationship. So this is the garage building I just referred to. This is taken from the garden of the application site. You can see the scale of the building there, its relationship to the neighbour on the right hand side, again shown a bit clearer in this photograph here, so you can see, you know, the relationship with the boundary there and the neighbouring property. I'll just keep scrolling down. Some context photos, obviously these are Google images, so the health warnings there, but I think it shows quite clearly the relationship with the neighbours. So the application property is a corner plot on the corner of Clinton Road and Courteville Road, and we've got you know, neighbours immediately either side of it. This is the carport roof that we saw earlier in the photographs, and the building behind it, and the relationships with the neighbours and the boundaries are shown quite clearly in these photographs. Oh, hang on, the plans are at the top ahead of the... There we go. Okay, so what we're looking at is a proposal to demolish the existing outbuilding and carport shown on these plans, and replacement with effectively an L shape. If I get the plans, no, they're not on that one. You can see from these images, it's a wraparound around the side of the dwelling. So a flat roof extension on the side where the carport was, and where the sort of outbuilding garage at the back being replaced with a larger, still single-storey ground floor extension, but it is obviously taller, as you can see from these plans. We've got the flat roof element at the side where the carport was, with some roof lanterns above, and then a pitched roof ground floor extension at the rear. It is closer to the neighbouring property that we saw at the back. So this part of the extension is slightly wider and closer to the boundary here. In terms of their outlook, can you see my arrow on the on the page? So currently they've got, you know, an outbuilding in this sort of location. What they will have is obviously a bigger wall plate and slightly closer to their boundary there. But as set out in the officer's report, I can probably stop sharing now. Have I stopped sharing? Yes.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so as set out in the officer's report, there have been concerns raised by neighbours, and I think we're going to hear from some of the neighbours in the public speaking. So I'll let them speak for themselves. But as set out in the report, the assessment concludes that the design and the impact on neighbours is considered to be acceptable in planning terms, and the officer's recommendation is for approval.
Lovely, thank you, Vicky. This application actually reminds me very much of an application we had some years ago in St Nicholas at Gerallan. Those members of planning committee that have been around a while will maybe remember that. But so, two public speakers. The first is Mrs. Judith Davis. Mrs. Davis, are you there? Lovely. I can hear you. I can't see you. I don't know whether you wish to come on screen or not.
Can you see me?
Yes, coming through. You are coming through. Okay. That's better. Yes. Lovely. See you. I can hear you loud and clear. You have 3 minutes, and I'll hand over to you. The clock will start when you commence your talk. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing us to speak. We live in the house immediately next to the extension, and so we're the ones who are most affected. Reading the application, you'd think it wasn't a big deal, but it isn't a replacement building, it's a new build. All there is between us at the moment is a small brick garage, which is used as a shed, measured about 10 by 16 feet, and a glass roof. This glass roof is what's called the carport. It hasn't any doors and is an open space, and it means there's light and air around the house, and we benefit from the light and the distance of 20 feet between our houses. This is a huge extension. It's 33 feet along the party wall, our party wall, and 20 feet deep alongside the side of the house. If allowed, the footprint of the original house is lost and the living space of next door transferred right up to our house, with life-changing consequences for us. It would mean the empty space underneath the glass roof would be encased by a roof and wall running the length of our party wall. Our kitchen window would be overlooking a solid block. The light into our house and garden would be drastically affected. When the plans were first published, we asked to meet our new neighbour in the hope of reaching a compromise. He wasn't willing to budge, politely telling us that he could do what he wants to on his land. We live in the back of the house in an open plan area which overlooks our garden and the party wall and the garage wall of next door. So the loss of light from the proposed extension would be significant. We haven't yet been told the height of the apex of the proposed extension of the 20 feet square room, which would replace the small garage, but it is considerably higher and bigger than the existing roof. We're retired and we spend a lot of time at home in this area, so it isn't something we could get away from. In the 20 years we've lived here, we've never heard a sound or smelled anything from next door. This extension would bring the kitchen to the party wall, less than 8 feet away from our living space. Although the proposed windows wouldn't overlook us as they would be high, the noise and smells would be funneled directly into where we live. Raising the roof would mean digging foundations, and past experience in this area shows this isn't straightforward as the houses are built on clay. The house opposite number 11 at number 14 Clinton Road fell down when the new owner there started extending the house. 5 years later, that house isn't finished. Since this application was called in, we were hoping to hear from the applicant, who works in London, to see whether a compromise could be agreed. We haven't heard anything, and despite asking, have still not been told the height of the apex of the proposed extension. It involves a large length of our party wall, and I know this isn't a matter for the planning committee, but it's obviously of great concern to us. The application is also a big worry for our immediate neighbours who've all contacted the council about it. There have been some nice extensions to some houses in the area, but this one is not sympathetic at all. It's far, far too big, and the cost of it to us is enormous.
Thank you very much. You were just on your time there. If you just hang on a second, just to see if anybody needs any clarification. I am Ben. You're waving. Yes.
So it was just clarifying. Obviously, there's a single flat roof part and the pitch part. When you talk about the bit that you haven't got clarification on, which bit are you talking about?
Part.
The pitch part.
The pitch part, which is just there, and the garage roof sort of goes along like that, and this is going to go like this, but it's going to go, the garage is like 9 feet wide. This is going to be 20 feet deep, so it's going to be a much bigger roof, much higher extension, and that's not including, I mean, the bit I really object to is that calling that a replacement. That's roof a replacement.
Let's clarify what I was needing to know. Sorry to cut across you. Thank you.
Sorry.
I understand the points you're making.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So no other points of clarification on that. I'm sure we will get to this detail when we start the debate, but I will now ask the other public speaker, who is Councillor Catherine Mccaffer, who we saw earlier, to come in and speak to us. So you know the drill, Catherine. 3 minutes, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Judith, for coming to speak to us as well today. I've called on this application to committee after being contacted by Judith. The ward that myself and Councillor Gray represent have many residential planning applications each month, and we're asked to comment and call them in on regular occasions. It's not something that I would do lightly. Having visited the location, I'm very concerned the report describes the structure of a similar size, and I do not believe that it's possible to replace a glass carport with a fully functioning building without having an undue impact on the neighbouring property. I have no issue with calling this in, as I believe the planning committee need to understand its extension is massive in proportion to what currently exists. And I'm really grateful that Victoria shared all those contextual photos with you so you could see it in its actual reality as opposed to just on a plan. I accept that the planning terminology, but it's not a like-for-like replacement. To a very large extent, it will be visible from the adjoining property by the increased height of the pitched roof, which will now be a solid structure and not as obtrusive as the glass. While I see the officer's point of view that it does not affect the street scene, surely affecting the neighbours is more important. I'm also concerned about the shared boundary wall. Surely, the side wall of the existing garage of number 11 is actually the same as the boundary wall. They're one in the same. It's not a garage next to a wall, it's the same thing. The applicants have little appreciation for this, as they will be in a new room and cannot see out of it. I hope that, just as the planning committee have already done this year, they go against the officer advice and reject the application due to the unneighbourly and overbearing nature of the extension proposed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Any clarification needed? No. Okay, thank you, Catherine. You are free to go. Vicky, did you want to make any comments on any of that before we open the debate up?
Thanks, Chair. Just to say, the description of development on page 141 of the Planning Committee report does set out the dimensions of the extensions, including the ridge heights and eaves heights of both parts of the flat roof and the pitched roof of the extension. So if Mrs Davis is looking for those dimensions, they are clearly set out in the officer's report.
Super, thanks, Vicky. Okay, let's open the floor up and see who wants to talk on this. Councillor Gray.
Not trying to break a habit of talking first on absolutely everything.
Why not?
I am the other local ward member for this, and I think the most telling picture that Vicky shared was that Google overview showing the placement of the glass roof to the neighbouring house. And I mean, the applicant's property sits on a very large plot, and may have got permission, I guess, for an extension onto another bit of ground that didn't interrupt with the line of the street line or the housing line. So I'm very supportive of the idea that it is unneighbourly, the nature of what's there. I remember our discussion on White House. I remember I voted with officer recommendations. I'm not asking anyone to change how they would think about something. And maybe this is part of a fear of, a problem of not having site visits, but not to open that can of worms now to truly see it. I think the photos did show exactly what the issues were, and I think that its siting and its mass next to the house, I do think it's unneighbourly, and I just can't support it, I'm afraid. I'll let the debate move on. I'm not going to move anything at the moment, but I just wanted to state those points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. I have Councillor Wilson or Councillor Birch, not quite sure which.
It is Councillor Wilson this time.
Over to you,
Chair. Just a few observations, really. I do see and understand the size and the scale of it, and it does seem very large. But bear in mind, we're, as you rightly said, there are large plots here. And I just wondered, are there any other precedents nearby? And also on the clarification of the street, is there any is this in any conservation area as well? Because that can be a material consideration on certain applications. I gather there might not be, but I just wanted to have clarification on that. So those are a couple of my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Vicky, would you like to respond?
Yeah, it's not a conservation area. And in terms of precedent, I think that's always a difficult one to refer to, because it's very, very rare that you get a like-for-like comparison where you can actually genuinely say that's a precedent and that you've got to follow that. Each application is considered on its own merits. In particular, this plot is unusual because of its corner plot relationship. So it's got these two neighbours immediately adjoining it, both of which are affected by the application because it's building on the boundary of both of those neighbours. For me, I think that is the key issue. I don't think this is an issue of street scene because of it being, located towards the back and the rear of the property. I think it is fundamentally about whether or not you think the impact on neighbours is acceptable or not. Bearing that in mind, it is, it's relevant to note it's a single-storey ground floor extension. It is large. I think we can all see from the plan that it is relatively large for a ground floor extension, but that doesn't necessarily make it unacceptable in terms of those neighbour impacts. So if I can, I will try and share my screen again because I wanted to show you those photographs. Can you see that, that I'm sharing that photograph again?
Yes.
So I think this image shows us quite clearly, yes, we've got this glass roof of the extension, and I don't think we can give an awful lot of weight to the fact that that is there and that that's being replaced, because quite clearly the flat roof extension that's being put there in its place is quite different in terms of its scale and its form and how it will be perceived from the neighbour. They will quite clearly have a blank wall elevation facing them at that part of their property. But I think if you look at this relationship with the neighbour, the neighbour has a large rear back garden. The part of the boundary and of their property that's now going to be enclosed, when you take into account the fact they've already got this building on the boundary there, which already has that enclosing effect to a certain extent, we're talking really about the enclosure on this part of their property. Partially they've got a garage themselves there right up to the boundary there, and I'm not saying that they won't see it. They will see it. They will have an impact in terms of their outlook, and I think Mrs. Davis referred to their kitchen window and the outlook from that. But we have to consider whether or not that is an unreasonable level of harm in terms of the height of those walls and the proximity on their boundary, having regard to the overall amenity that they've got within that whole plot and that large garden and so on. Similarly, we can see in this image the impact to the other neighbour, where as I referred to, it's essentially going to enclose this part of their boundary. But again, it's a ground floor extension that we're talking about here, and it is very rare for us to refuse applications for single-storey ground floor extensions because, by virtue of their height and scale, they don't tend to be so harmful as to be unacceptable in terms of their impact on neighbours. So hopefully that's responded to some of those concerns.
Lovely, thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Vince, I see you have a hand up. I did see that our public speaker, Mrs. Davis, put her hand up just to inform her. I think Gareth has probably done it. That's why her hand's gone down. Unfortunately, you you can't come back now into the debate. This is just for members only. But Vince Driscoll has his hand up. Councillor Driscoll, over to you.
Yeah, Chair, it's okay. I was going to ask Vicky to share the aerial photos again, so which she's already done. So
you need, Vince.
What's that?
Have you seen all you need now?
Yeah, fine. Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay. Anybody else got any points? Any questions? I'm happy to go and recommend officer's recommendation. Is somebody out there willing to second me?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. And if we're all happy with, I'm going to take this one to a vote, because obviously Councillor Gray has indicated he's not happy with it. So there may be others that aren't. I will now ask members, starting with myself, if they're happy to go with officer's recommendation or not. And I am happy. Councillor Gray, for,
against officer recommendations.
Against, lovely. Councillor Aviat?
Officer's recommendation.
For, that is. Julie?
Yes, sorry, for,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rhiannon Birch?
For officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Christine Cave?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Pam Drake?
For officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Vince Driscoll?
For officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Stuart Edwards?
Against officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Hodges?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp, I'm not sure if he's still here. He did say he was going at 5:30. So I think he must have left. Yeah. Councillor Andrew Parker?
For officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Leighton Rowlands?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Neil Thomas?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ed Williams?
For.
Thank you, Eddie. Councillor Wilson, Mark Wilson?
Against.
Thank you. And I don't think Margarita's there. Is she, Margarita?
Yes, I am, John. Can you hear me?
Lovely. What's your vote, Margarita?
Against.
Okay, thank you very much. So, I'll have a quick tot up, but it's very close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 against. As I voted for, it just squeaks through with my casting vote. So that's a very close one. Okay, so agenda item 10 are urgent items. I don't have any. We don't have any part twos, and I thank you all for coming along to the meeting and partaking. Thanks to the officers, and see you all soon.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Good night, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Good night.